Hello, and welcome to our latest installment of Pretty Owl Poetry. We had some technical difficulties, so if you were on our YouTube, just disregard anything you saw. Uh, Joining us today is Kirsten Imani Kasai, and she's the author of three novels. Ice Song and Tattoo are about the adventures of a gender-swapping single mother and the half-human inhabitants of the frozen Sigiu. Private Pleasures deals with the desire and the sex industry, and she's the author of a short fiction poetry collection, Rhapsody in Snakeskin: Tales of Erotica and Horror. Kristen is also the editor and co-founder of Body Parts magazines and holds an MFA from Antioch University. She lives in California with her children and her girlfriend. Connect with her online via icesong.com, facebook.com, Kirsten Imani Kasai, or wattpad.com, Imani Kasai. This is, of course, not to mention that Kirsten is the photographer behind the cover of Pretty Owl Poetry's latest release, which you can check out at our website, prettyowlpoetry.com. We're going to switch out now, and Kirsten's going to read some poetry for us.
Kirsten, I think you need to just unmute yourself if you can do that. There you go.
All right, can you hear me okay? Yeah? Okay. I'm going to... Oh, wait, just a quick thing. This is like fun trivia fact. So it's not actually Sigu, it's Sig from the 1980s, early 90s post-punk weird band Sig Sig Sputnik, if anyone remembers them. I guess you have to be of a certain age now, which I am. Okay, so since I was in a panic getting here because of a little accident on the freeway, I thought it very appropriate that I read a poem called Red Lights Flashing. Red lights flashing. Stop, she ordered, a general arresting the march. We must cease this plundering turn, for the damage is great, and we will not survive. Squealing brakes paint rubber comet trails across night's tarry road. Red lights flashing. Cataclysm arrested, red lights flashing, meteor showers on the lawn, scorched trails to her door. I shredded the letters and gulped down the evidence, reinforced the fort, built up its walls. Pinwheeling suicides, we leapt for the edge. There were bombs, explosions. In this terrible war waged with polite words, please and thank you, and if you will, all went tumbling into disarray. We must stop, she said. I agreed, for I would fall in so deeply I should never again climb out. Thirst is the poem that's appearing in the Pretty Owl issue that you guys wonderfully put together, which I loved. So I will read Thirst, which has a dual meaning for me. It can be about the reemergence of something from the past, or an idea, or a person, or something that maybe has haunted you throughout your life. But if you also read it a certain way, it can be about the Loch Ness Monster. So this is Thirst. Lake bottom beast, Lake bottom beast, muck dweller, she reemerges. I swim, I sail, I cast my nets in calmed waters while the myth sleeps. But safety is short-lived. She reemerges, again rocking the boat. Stay submerged where you belong, until my yearning to see your sleek head break the lake's skin calls you up again from the deeps. Here are a couple of poems that I wrote about my children and my experience as a mother. My first child, my daughter, who is now 20 years old and in college, was born at home in San Francisco, and that was a wonderful experience to have a home birth. So because the little boy that lived next door to us came out a couple days after I had the baby and was asking his mother what was all of that screaming and noise we heard. And she said she was having a baby, and here's the baby. So apparently the whole neighborhood could hear me when I was giving birth, which is fine. So this poem is called The Whole Neighborhood Knew I Had a Baby That Day. Sweet child, I add my breath to your breath. Inhale and sing, chant, howl through each contraction. My long, deep ohs fill our house with sound, float out the windows and over the fence into the ears of the little boy next door. I birth you on waves of my breath. Open your mouth, the midwives say. Make your throat a tunnel, your mouth a cave. Each end is connected. Both mouths must open wide. My breath rides my blood. The cord connecting us transmutes my electric charge to you. And when you emerge to take your first breath, it is my song you pull inside, my chant, my howl. Sweet child, I add my breath to your breath. And because having children takes a little toll, which all mothers know, on the body, this one is called Alma Mater. Whose body do I inhabit? Worn and weathered, a comforting lovey, squeezed, caressed, patted into shape by 4 small hands. Not my mother's, burned, its ashes scattered to the sea. You were the fat one, I say, these memories sweet. Your sister, she was small, 3 pounds lighter, but not lesser than you. This belly, I say, my badge of honor. These marks, this damage, a small price to pay. Do we have time for a couple more? Okay. Let's see. Since we're talking about the body, I'm going to read Air Hunger. I think one of the reasons that I became a writer was because I've had asthma my whole life, and so I spent a lot of time when I was little in bed and reading. And so this is a poem about how asthma feels and what it does to you emotionally and in the body. And it's called Air Hunger. It's like Gollum's cave in these lungs. I'd rather not linger in the lightless damp. It's too quiet. All my thoughts pool there, what drains through a waking day's sieve. All the thoughts I admit to owning, prideful or begrudgingly. Crystals do not grow there, no beauties intrinsic, breath or eye-catching. In the quiet seat of all unspoken, every word, vowel, symptom I have swallowed. Some daring excavator may descend, bringing light, soon snuffed out, his canary wilting. Shovels, picks, and good intentions. He may work these walls, fill his bin with useful treasures, but I doubt he'll make it out alive. And, let's see. This is called Process Estivation, and it's about awakening from sleep, whether it's a sleep of the spirit, a sleep of the heart, a sleep of the body. Process Estivation. She had forgotten all of it. Too long had she lain sleeping. Snow White knew the apple tainted, bit deeply, seeking poison like nectar. Sleeping Beauty summoned the spindle's narcotic draught, milk teeth madly grinning, blood beating on her finger. She swallowed the magic bread, despite the warnings, never eat from fey hands. Let the fisherman steal her sulky skin to keep her from the deep and salted sea. Buried undreaming, apple rotting in her throat, blood clotting in her veins, watching night's noiseless apocalypse descend. Awakened, she is ravenous.
Thanks. That was so great.
I have one more if you want one more. I didn't know how many to read.
We'll mute it back up and you one more.
Okay, this will be my last one then. So this poem is called Mother, 1989, which is the year that my mother passed away. I was 19. Out from the night, there crept slithering blue-footed maws, 1,000 boiling shadows, hungering for transcendent faces. I walked, smelling sulfur in the wet and dark, smelling hot iron in the chinks between the light and simmering sickle of moon, bent with the howling wind like the earth's hair, rooted deep in the receding ground, woven amongst scant bones. I watched moonlight skip across the water, dancing on sea-pebbled feet until it fell behind the rim of the world, vanished back into night, and the hungering shadows, the shallow-bellied shadows, leapt into my throat under cover of darkness to steal the light from my glittering face. Ta-da!
I did it again.
That was so great.
All great, yeah.
Thank you.
That was fun to read.
So
All right.
we'll start first with questions.
I don't know.
Well, I can start off because I'm really curious about the birth poem where everybody could hear on the street and the neighbors. What does that poem look like, and how is, because we can't see it, and that one wasn't in the journal, but
Sure.
how did you structure it? I don't know if you can like hold it up to the camera or just, I would love to see the way it looked, just the spacing. Because the way that you were reading it, it had sort of a rhythm that I could see line breaks.
I don't know if you
Okay.
can see.
Yeah.
But this one is just pretty much all one continuous flow.
Okay.
Until you get to the end. I suppose the spacing is in the breath and the way that you read it.
Yeah, that's what it is,
Yeah.
that was really great.
I do a little bit of play with the text, like the one alma mater. If you can see that, some of the sections are inset, so that it can be. It's a sort of a poem within a poem, so you can read the inset sections, which are their own story within the frame of the larger story.
Oh, cool.
That's really cool.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So I do like the text to be a part of the experience of reading.
Yeah.
And looking at it.
I'm curious if you could talk about the art that we used of yours for the cover of the third issue, and if you tell us like a little bit about like where that was taken and just anything about it really, because we don't know anything.
Yeah. So in May of this year, I was in Romania, and I was doing an artist residency there. It's Inside Zone, the Transylvanian Artist Residency. Oh. And that is in Borsec, which is a little town in the Carpathian Mountains from Dracula fame. It's located in the upper section, like the north that used to be Transylvania. And I was there for about 10 days, and Borsec has a really interesting history in that it used to be like a retreat for the wealthy, and it has a lot of natural mineral springs throughout the entire town and in the hills around in the mountains. And so in the late 19th century and earlier 20th century, the wealthy and elite would go there to take the waters and get mineral cures. And so they built all of these exquisite villas which I think under various states of communism and economic collapse, the buildings themselves have collapsed and are now standing empty and open. And so you can just walk into any of these gorgeous old buildings, and they're all just available and slowly decaying and peeling, but there's still remnants of the previous occupants inside. And so I spent a lot of time walking around photographing this beautiful decay, which, interestingly enough, Americans seem to love because we don't really have much of it. You know, we don't have these grand historical monuments falling into disarray. Everything for us is, you know, within 100 or 2 years, relatively new. But for the Romanians, they didn't want that to be the focus of our attention when we were there. But for me, it really signified just sort of the passing of time and age. Just, it was like this beautiful dowager, you know, and you could look at her and see that, oh yes, she'd been a great beauty in her day, and she was so popular and so loved. And age and time have taken their toll, and, you know, they're sort of worn and bent and broken, but still beautiful. And so the photo that is on the cover is a set of doors in one of those buildings, and I was just drawn to the beautiful colors. There was one day that I went out taking pictures in the afternoon, and the sun was setting, and everything was just awash with this gorgeous golden light, and it brought out the warmth in all of the buildings. And so the pictures that I have most treasured from that trip tend to be very simple, like the reflection of trees in a window pane, but the paint on this elaborate frame is peeling up, you know, and you can see different variations in the color on the top of the paint and the underside and the layers of paint underneath, or the reflection of trees in a puddle, or just the interplay of the light across all these patchy buildings with their states of repair and decay.
That's so cool. I'm so glad you shared that with us.
Yeah,
it's very. I mean, I took a lot of photos, but I just couldn't stop looking at everything really closely. It was just weirdly captivating to see these tiny details of, you know, crackling paint, or the way brick slowly erodes just left on its own.
And you said that there was still some remnants of the people that is there furniture, a lot of furniture left, or is there actual possessions, or is it mostly abandoned, these buildings?
They're mostly built up via medical office. I think it's probably about 4 stories. And when you go inside, there's still desks and files. I found building plans. I found suitcases with this weird giant light bulb thing in it that looked like it had been used in some medical experiment. And I regret so much that I didn't try to take it home with me. So yeah, I mean, it's odd. It's kind of like almost post-apocalyptic, where people fled and left their things behind, you know, and the dirt and the leaves have blown in, and when you walk through the buildings, you can hear the empty, you know, the wind coming through, and the doors are slamming and creaking, and it was just fabulous.
It's interesting because you were talking about how thirst is you know, a reemergence of the past, or something that's kind of haunting, and that's sort of what the image is too. I mean, it's a little bit haunting in a way. Definitely, it's great to hear that backstory, because I would not have guessed all of that, but it's interesting how they kind of parallel.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said the Loch Ness thing. Did you go to Scotland too?
Yes, I've been to Scotland. I was there when I was little, like 12. And I was very excited to go to Loch Ness, and of course I searched for Nessie and didn't see her. But I like the idea of this mythology that sort of reemerges and submerges throughout our own personal lives. You know, it could be a theme or a person or some idea or something that we kind of have this teasing relationship with, where we want to experience it, but we also want to keep it at bay and keep the mystery intact, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Now, I did dabble a little bit in your book Ice Song, and I noticed that that Ice Song kind of almost opens similarly. You have this woman rising up out of the deep, out of the dark ocean, the depths of like mystery and stuff like that. Maybe some subconscious or something like that. What does the ocean mean to you, I guess, is what I'm wondering now, seeing that parallel between the two pieces. This moment rising out.
A lot of, yeah. The ocean for me is a place of beauty and solace and magic, but I also find it very frightening. I mean, it really is representative of the subconscious in that we can only explore to a certain depth. There's so much that we will never see or experience, and when you get down to the bottom of the ocean, you know, there are primitive life forms that have dwelled there for millions of years, almost virtually unchanged, and I think that that is an excellent metaphor for the human mind as well. You know, you get the top layers with the light and the activity where things change more rapidly, but then down deep in the darkness, you have the secrets and the primal feelings and emotions of the past.
Oh, whoa. Yeah, I think I heard once that we have more of the moon map than we do the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, it's really kind of like the last great unexplored country.
Yeah. Yeah, Final Frontier there. That's really interesting. That's awesome. So, is that like a recurring motif, I guess, like in your writing? Do you feel like what's subconscious in your writing?
About the ocean?
Yeah, I mean, like, do you feel as though like you have these stories kind of churning in your mind, I guess, before you go to write them, and then like as you're consciously putting them on paper, or do you plan out your stories before you write them? Is it more like an improv thing, or is it more of a pre-planned? Do you purposely use these ocean motifs, or you think they just kind of come out of like your creativity?
Well, I think that well, first of all, I think that as writers, we tend to have a store of images that we always dip into. Things that are especially meaningful to us that we tend to go back to again and again, so perhaps this is one of them. But in terms of my own storytelling, it's sort of an process of accretion where one idea becomes magnetized and then it starts pulling in all of these other ideas and resonances and imagery from the world around, and as I hear things or experience them or read about them, like, oh, that goes there. It's odd that when I write, I feel this almost physical sensation of like putting together Legos. Like the words and the pictures are my little building blocks, and I'm just going click, 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 and snapping them together. So that's one way, and I also think of it in terms of the stories not necessarily being pre-existent, but they sort of already are in a way, and I feel that I am just like a radio, and I'm interpreting a broadcast and transmitting it. Which is weird because I do feel like when I'm cueing into a story, I have to tune into it somewhere outside of myself to get on the same frequency as the story. I know this sounds really spacey, but it's just this bizarre process, and I think a lot of artists would relate to a sense of being connected to something profound that is outside of themselves, but also within.
I can relate to that a lot, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very weird process, but it's magical. I mean, it's kind of like the last magic that we have is not understanding whether it's coming from, you know, the collective unconscious or just this pool of human stories that we keep, you know, dipping into and swimming through over the ages, or if the ideas are new. But it's fun to have that experience and to get to, I don't know, kind of be a conduit for something that is bigger than yourself in a way.
Well, wow. Thanks a lot for that, then.
I didn't even finish my first glass of wine and that came out.
I kind of have like a similar question like that I had written beforehand, and also sort of plays off of what Rose was asking or talking about earlier with the poem that you have. Like, I was curious if you use your own photography at all as prompts for the poems that you write. How Rose said that she could kind of see how the thirst relates in a way to the photograph that's used for the cover. I was just curious if you see all of your art kind of working together, or if you use your own photography at all as a means to propel your writing.
I definitely am very image-oriented, but I don't necessarily take cues from the photographs, really. I kind of think of the process of when I take pictures as the same as writing, and that I really like to look closely and focus on detail. Like the picture that's on the cover is, you know, it's basically just two doors and the intersection of them opening, but in very close detail so that you can see the cracks, but then there's also something behind that you can look at. So it's really the same process, I suppose, for me, because my writing is very visual inside my brain. I would like to get into using photography and art more with my writing in conjunction, maybe making video poems or combining text with art. So, yeah, there's a lot of room to experiment and play.
Now, before you get into actually transcending the text and mixing image and writing, I mean, I feel as I should ask, and I think I asked this question to just about everyone. In an age where you're sending text messages out and you're writing emails, you know, 24/7, everything's a search query and whatnot, what separates writing on a day-to-day basis from poetry? What makes your poetry special and different than other things you write?
I think absolutely it's intent. Because there's, you know, there's different kinds of art, there's different kinds of communication, and while I think you can speak to people poetically, the intent to sort of focus through such a narrow lens and condense experience and feeling into a few words is a very specific process. I mean, I think for me and for most authors probably, we have a very different voice. Because, I mean, it wouldn't necessarily seem pretentious, but it would be odd to speak to people in such convoluted terms. However much we might like it, you know. So I don't know. I mean, there's a really deliberate consciousness about word choice and beauty, symbolism and meaning, which I think is opposite of what you try to convey when you're just speaking to someone, where you try to be as precise and factual as possible. I mean, if you're having an argument with your lover, you're going to try to really pin down exactly what you're thinking and feeling and try to be really precise. Or if you're, giving someone directions or talking about business, you want to be factual and precise. When you are writing poetry, I think the aim is to be nebulous and to leave things open to interpretation, which is really not what you want when you're communicating with people.
Right. Can I follow that up? Which one comes more naturally to you? The poetry or the precise factual talk?
I think that if I could walk through the world and interact with people just by handing them little scrolls that I've written, which could be perfectly vague, and just, deliver this weird little message and then drift away, I would be thrilled to death.
Good.
That's awesome.
I support that lifestyle.
Let's do it. So if anyone walks up to you and hands you a weird little message, you'll know they're in our group, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hoping.
Kirsten, I was hoping you could talk about Body Parts Magazine a little and tell us about that a little more.
Yes, absolutely. So my friend Jesse Caverly, who's an amazing writer, he writes incredible, intense, zombie, apocalyptic fiction. And I decided that we needed a venue for people like us who really were drawn to pain and suffering and the dark side and grossness, medical mysteries and horror, supernatural weirdness, just sort of all this dark stuff. And this came about because we were talking about our writing not really having a place. Like, a few years ago, I'd submitted a story to Weird Tales, and they wrote back and told me that my story was too weird. Right? I was like, but you're Weird Tales. How can a story be too weird? And I had the same experience where I sent it to some publication that said it was all about dark fiction, and they said, no, this is too dark.
Oh my God.
So, well, okay, so we need a place for ultra dark, ultra weird fiction. And so we decided to start Body Parts Magazine, which is an online venue right now, focusing on weird, dark fiction, and absolutely with an erotic component, things that other magazines would shun. So our tagline is "We are not afraid," and we're hoping just to kind of create a community of people who are not afraid to look at the darkness and spookiness and nastiness of humanity, but in a pleasurable, artistic way. So we're trying to just kind of get our footing right now. I think we've put out some really fantastic issues. We just did issue number 3, and we're hoping to start getting some art and interviews and essays in it. And we are a paying publication, so that's great because we really want to enhance, even if it's a little bit, the value in work. Because I think, it feels good to get paid. So we need to figure out how to get our issues up in a format that is easily accessible. I guess, on Kindle or e-readers, which I've been working on. But we're kind of chugging along. It's just the two of us, and we had such a terrific response in each issue, and our submissions snowballs. So we're finding that we have a lot of excellent stories to get through each time, but it's really exciting. I love being a part of it. So it's bodypartsmagazine.com, and come check us out and give us a read.
Awesome.
It's great, and I'm glad that we didn't say your poems are too pretty, Al. Too poetry. We can't publish that.
All right.
Well, all right. Well, I mean, I think that's probably a good place to draw a conclusion here. So thank you very much for joining us, Kirsten, and it was a pleasure. Thanks for reading the poems. They were all amazing. And I now have not yet gotten a chance to check out your magazine, so after that introduction, I'm definitely going to do that.
So. Excellent. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.